So yesterday, I went through. Actually, let me bring up the architecture real quick. So yesterday, we worked on the worker and all the stuff it had to do. So basically, it consumes a message. It determines whether or not the message was ACK or NACK. Based on whether it's ACK or NACK, it will either ACK or NACK with SQS. Acking means deleting messages in SQS, and knacking just means leaving them alone, and they'll eventually reappear in the queue. And then I set up the registry, and I started to make this connection here, and then started to create an integration test for the whole thing, and then discovered I didn't set this up right. So then I started to look at how I could notify from the registry to the pollers, from setup to the poller, that it had finished all of its work, and so that the pollers could then connect to the queues. And I didn't really have a good grasp on exactly what I wanted to do there, so I ended the stream so I could do some research. Yesterday, I talked to some people on the Slack channel for Elixir, and one guy, actually, let me just look up his name. No, I can't say that. Saisashi, there we go. Helped me figure out what I was doing wrong whenever I was using the registry. So that'll be the first thing we fix today. And I just did a little bit more research on ETS to better understand what I wanted to do there. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So let's open up, let's see, the worker. So the worker is subscribing to a poller, and the poller's name is this. So the thing I couldn't figure out yesterday was it was complaining that the module that I'm specifying here doesn't have a where is. And I was like, well, it's a registry, so why doesn't it have that? It turns out that it's really just the registry that I should be using here. And so that basically tells VIA, hey, use this module to decide how to do the various things. The other piece here that's necessary is I'm also missing, so this is the name, but I also need to specify the module for my registry. So I need to do that. So the first argument here, so let me walk through it. So VIA says use some other registry rather than the global registry. This registry says use this registry module to do all the lookup and storing of registered processes. And this tuple says this is the registry to use, and this tuple is this is the name of the process that I want to connect to. So with that out of the way, we also need to do similar changes here. So registry, and then we want to wrap this in a tuple. And then in the poller, we need to correctly name it there as well. So that's happening here. This should be registry. And then the rest of this are arguments to that registry. So let's just make sure I'm not doing VIA anywhere else. It's a poller worker. All right, and then the worker test. Okay, so actually let's run our test because those should break now that I have changed that. Cool. So this is the one we want to fix right now. Okay, where's that? Worker test. So worker test 9. So this should be registry, and then this part here should be a tuple. Cool. So that looks better. So then we were working on an integration test, and in the integration test, so now I have some errors in the integration test that aren't there I was having before, which we can see up here. So this is what I was running into before using registry in the incorrect place. So now we can address this issue. So what is this saying? No function clause matching an anonymous function in the worker group supervisor init. So let's take a look at that. So in worker group supervisor init, right. So subscribers is not what I had previously thought it was. It's really going to be this. So just a tuple of name and subops. So that should resolve that issue there. It may cause a breakage in another test, because this test is probably passing in the wrong thing. So we can fix that. So worker group supervisor test. So this should look like this. And I believe the output should be the same. So let's just rerun that. Cool. So we fix that. And all right, so now we're just running into, so the way we're starting our workers is problematic because we're creating multiple that have the same name, essentially, or same ID. So let's go look at the worker supervisor. So we're iterating over the worker pool size. So a thing we can do to get around this is to just also pass the name as part of the ID. So that way it's globally unique, which it seems like is the problem here. We're just creating conduit SQS worker for Q1 and also for Q2. Oh, hey, I can't say your name. Grown Tesoa BV? Yeah, sorry. I probably butchered your name. But hey, let me know if you have any questions. So let's see. What are we doing here now? All right, so this should fix the issue. We should have a broken test because we're expecting different output, but we can fix that as we run into it. Oh, no, so it thinks the same thing even with that. Interesting. So, so why would we be getting the same process being started under here? Let's see. Okay, so we have a unique registry that we are putting this in. So actually, let's look at the worker. Maybe it's actually that the worker is failing to start, and it's because the name, yeah, okay. So the name we're using here is problematic. Is it? Interesting. So, yeah, I feel like that's probably the, oh, no, sorry, that's part of the state. That shouldn't be an issue there. Let me just reformat this slightly. So the name here is the module subscription name. Yeah, so that's going to be an issue. We need to know, we need a unique name here for this one. So I'm going to pass the num down so that we have a unique way to name this process. So here, we can just pass num as an option. And so just double checking everything. So num there, that'll be the name. And we shouldn't need to pass it further down. So yeah, let's try that out. Okay. Awesome. So that looks much better. Different error, but you know, everything was able to start up, and it just failed making some requests. So we can fix that later. So let's just fix this test here. So worker supervisor test EXS11. All right, and so the thing that we have changed here, so we now have the name is test1 instead of just the number. Oh, actually, you know what? That was a change that we likely didn't need to make. That was just my first thought about what the issue was, but this should be fine because this is the, wait, sorry, this is underneath, yeah, so this should just be num. Since this is directly under a supervisor, and I'm pretty sure this name is only, this ID is only used by this supervisor, it shouldn't matter if we have a conduit SQS worker 1 under another version of the supervisor, for example. So I don't think that that needs to change, but we can test that. Okay. There's a lot more red here. Wow. All right. We'll take a look at that in a second. So, all right, what did I miss here? So that's saying that the left has the number, the right. Oh, right. So we did change it though to pass along the number to the argument. So inside of our start link, the argument will include 1 there and then 2 here. Cool. So I'm actually going to check all that in. Get everything to start. Cool. All right, so now let's just run the test again. We'll see everything fail. Oh wait, what happened? Did I forget to? Oh, I just told it to commit again. Let's run the test again. All right. So actually, one thing I want to do first is make sure that so I'm recording the VCRs with I'm recording all the HTTP requests with XVCR, and while I was running the test before, it was failing, so it may not have been recording anything. So I want to make sure that I do it with out of VCR to begin with, and then test it. Okay, so we got a bunch of errors. Interesting. So actually, I should fix this just so I don't see this anymore. This is sort of benign, but basically it doesn't like the fact that I've called something with config integration tests. This is inside test. So here I'm using integration test, but integration test isn't a application that's in my inside my applications that should start up. And so it's like, hey, you're configuring something that doesn't exist. And technically it does exist, it's just in my tests. So I'm going to just change this to conduit SQS. And then in the one place I use it, which is in the integration test, I can just change the OTP app to conduit SQS. So that should remove that error. And let me just make sure that I don't have a VCR. So it's in the test. VCR cassettes. Oh, sorry, fixture. VCR cassettes. And then, okay, so there's nothing here for that. That's fine. All right, so let's rerun tests. All right, so this is what I would expect to see. Conduit SQS started. So that's what will happen whenever the conduit SQS supervisor starts. It says SQS started, so that's good. So declaring queue, I expect that to get printed out once. And the reason is because that gets called by setup, and setup should only be creating a queue once. So it looks like this is actually crashing multiple times. And on the fifth one, or the fourth one, I guess here, it then causes its supervisor to restart this guy. And so you see the adapter got started again. And so that happens again and again, and then it just sort of falls over. So that appears to be what the issue is. Yeah, it's setup is terminated. So let's go double check that we haven't completely botched something there. So in setup, let's see, so it's crashing here. And the reason is so we send a stop. So we wanted to actually stop because we're trying to, essentially after we're done doing the work that we need to do here, we need to, we just want this process to stop. And so inside of conduit SQS, we set it up, then CPU issues, yeah. Sorry, my screen recording software gets a little happy sometimes and causes things to glitch out. But anyways, so in conduit SQS, what we do is we say restart transient. And so the goal here would be that um, we start up this process, it does the work that it needs to do, and then it exits with a normal shutdown. And then restart transient here should basically say, oh, you're shutting down normally. I don't need to restart you. So it looks like something that I've done there isn't exactly working. Let's see. So there's two things I want to check here. One, that I'm using the correct restart strategy, and then the second thing I want to check is, actually, it's probably the first thing I want to check, is that I'm using the right return code here for handle info. So let's go look at the docs for that. So inside of GenServer, this is GenStage. GenServer, I want to look at the handle info callback. So I'm using this return. And my expectation was that that was a normal shutdown. Let me go read what it says to say about handle cast. So returning stop, reason, new state, stops the loop, and terminate 2 is called with the reason, and the state, new state. The process exits with reason. So I mean, I don't see, unless it expects me to return something more specific than that for a normal um, shutdown of a process, then I'm not sure. I think I'll just Google that. How to shut down a process. Let's change that to stop. Well, I guess I could always kill the process with a particular um, uh, particular status, but I don't think that's what I want to do. So let's see. Actually, I think a good thing to look at would be task, because task does essentially what I want to do. So let's look at Elixir task. So I just want to look at the source. So it doesn't stop. So that's starting. What is task used for? I was thinking just what is task used for? It's the function that it calls whenever you call start link. So we call it task.async. and it captures a MFA, the current process, spawns a link of the current process, the owner of the current process, and the MFA. So spawn link is what we'll want to check out. And then it monitors that it sends something to the task. So it just sends the owner and the ref. So the ref is the ref of itself, and owner is this process. So it tells the task, here is the PID for the process that started you, and the reference for its monitor on you. So task must have a handle info to handle that. So I'm interested in looking at spawn link here on task supervised. Okay. So spawn link. I wonder if I should be just passing normal for my reason. That seems reasonable. So if I say stop normal and then state, I thought the reason there could just be whatever I want it to be, but maybe it can't be. So let's do this again. So, okay, yeah, that basically fixed everything. So I need to fix this test because it was expecting that message. But here, I just need to, so I was expecting to get a message back from SQS. It's probably not reasonable that it comes back in 100 milliseconds, unfortunately. SQS tends to be a little bit slow, so I'll handle 1 first, and then I'll handle 2. Actually, where was 1? It was in setup test 24. So here we want to stop with normal. I should create a PR for like docs for the expected reasons somewhere, or at least link to them, and submit that for Elixir, because there I had no reason to know what the reasons could be. So let's just so I'm just creating a note for myself later on, or maybe on stream actually. I'll go look to see if I can find a place where the docs are for that, and maybe create links for them. All right, so we have failure, and that's okay. So integration test, let's just blow this away. All right, so then in our integration test, Oh, actually, you know what? I forgot the other part of the stuff I was going to do for this podcast, and so I know a very good reason why there were no messages. I never told the pollers that they could start consuming messages from the queues. So in Conduit SQS, um, I'm now creating a table, um, and I need to set a value in the table inside setup, so that whenever this process is done setting up all the queues, um, the pollers uh, can know that, oh, now they can actually start doing some work. So I want to split screen this. So here I want to do conduit SQS dot queue table name. It looks like I don't have the broker available here. So that's one thing I'll need to pass down. So let's add broker here. Here. And here. And then add that as a part of the struct. There. Here. Oops. And then here I can just do state.broker like that. So that'll fix that. I need to go up the supervision hierarchy though to fix the rest of the stuff. So the guy who calls this is conduit SQS. And he needs to pass the broker here. And yeah. My computer's running really sluggish. And it's 100% OBS. Alright, well, I'll just deal with it for now. So now we've set up the broker. We should rerun the test. We will have broken something by not passing a correct argument. So conduit SQS test. Oops. Here we need to let's see, not the registry setup. We are passing to start link the broker, and then the other one is not that one, that's the integration test. This is SQS test. Oh, actually, I'm not sure why that one would fail. I haven't done anything to break that one that I'm aware of. This one will fail though, and that's because setup test. Oops. Needs to pass broker on init, and the state will now be broker, like so. And let's rerun test with that. So 3 failures. So conduit SQS test. Let's just close some stuff. There. I keep hitting Control O instead of Command O instead of Command P. So on the setup worker, oh, I didn't mean to put this in here. It should be outside that list. Okay, so that looks better. Now why is this test failing? So the code and write are subtly different. For now, let's just try and delete that VCR. Which one is that? That is not sure which one that is. SQS test. So 54. So this is receive. Let's just delete that one for now. And then rerun. Is there more to this error that I'm missing? See, so let's just dive in, I guess. So SQS test, it's failing. We're expecting to get something that matches this, and we get something that doesn't match this. So let's just compare. All right, so we have a list of conduit message. That list contains one item. Oops. So assigns is empty. That's fine. That's the default. Body is high, so that's normal. Content encoding is nil. That's the default, so it doesn't need to be specified. Content type same. Correlation ID is 1, so that matches. Created at nil. Created by test. Those match. Destination is nil. All right. Headers. So approximate first received timestamp. And then we're just saying don't care about the value, so that's fine. Approximate received count. So that's 3 now. All right, let's just mark that as that because we don't actually care about the value there. Attempts 1. Well, let's just rerun the tests with that. Okay, yeah, all right. So we get 1 failure now. Let me just look at the diff here, but I want to commit this. So that fixes that warning. That gives us the broker so that we can access the table. Oh, we haven't actually done the thing that we were trying to do. So now that we've got the table here, we need to store something in it so that we can activate. You know, I'm going to do this in setup topology actually instead. Oops. SQS. So inside setup topology, we do that. Let's see, so we map through and then we call setup on each of them, and we return the body for each. Are we using that in our test? Yeah. So I still want to be able to use that in the test, so I'm going to preserve that behavior. So I'm just going to call this results. We can return results. And then topology here, well, actually, so broker, well, broker here, and then broker, pipe that into, actually, let's just create a function for that. So what are we doing here? We are activate queues. And we can just pass the broker. So now, let's do this. So the thing I'm thinking about is that I'm not sure I want the logic to actually be here. I may want it to be in another module. I can just write it out here and then move it. So broker, pipe that into conduit SQS queue table name. So that gave us the table. Then we can do ETS and insert. So the first arg, I believe, is just the key. So here I'm just going to do. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to. Let's use an atom. So what do I want this to be? Oh, actually, let's use the broker. And then is that how that works? Unfortunately, this is Erlang, so I have to go look at the docs for Erlang, or look at Elixir's guide for it. So insert. Oh, right. This is the name of the. Right. So I'm already doing that. That's fine. So insert the table name, and then active true. Let me just double check the docs over here as well. So insert yeah, so that's just using an atom. That's fine. All right. Oops. All right. So now I'm setting this up. So now I want the polars to basically check that value to see if they can activate themselves, basically. So let's actually pass the broker down here as well. And let's make that part of the state. And let's send our, so we either want this to be accumulate or, I forget what the other option is, I think something like pass through. Let's just look that up. So demand, it's called forward. Yeah, so we want to set it to either forward or accumulate. And the criteria we do that based on is if we do ETS dot lookup, we need to tell it the table name. So that's just going to be, let's do this way. So broker and conduit SQS dot queue table name. We're going to pipe that into ETS dot lookup, and we wanted to check for active. So yeah, just the same atom that we use there. So lookup active, and then the result will be used as part of this case statement. So we can set the demand mode equal to that. And when we get true here, we can say demand is equal to forward. And when it's anything else, we say it's equal to accumulate. And then we can also send a message to our process itself to check to see if the state has changed. So here we can just do process.send self. The message will be check active. And options are just empty. So now we can define another handle info method at impl true handle info check active, and then we should get past the state. and we're interested in pulling out the broker here. All right, so in check active, we basically want to do the same thing we're doing here. You know what? To simplify this, we could just only ever do this after the process is started. So we always set it to accumulate to begin with, no matter what. And we always schedule process.send self, check active, and options. So we always do that. And then in the function itself, we can do all this stuff. And then we can do no reply, nothing for messages, and then state, since we won't be changing the state. And then rather than just returning something here, we can do GenStage dot demand self, and then the mode will be forward here, and then we shouldn't need to do anything here except reschedule. So we're actually going to do a send after, and we're just going to set it for, let's see, what are the options? Time. So let's just do like, I don't know, 20 milliseconds. So it'll just keep sending itself the same message every 20 milliseconds, so we can check whether or not it can activate itself. And then once it has actually activated itself, it stops sending itself that message. Okay. So let's run our tests, but we should also probably add some tests to validate some of this behavior is happening. So we failed. Broker not found in our state for polar. So let's add broker here. Okay. So a couple things broken. So this one we can ignore for right now. This is one matter. So polar test. So we need to pass a broker here. And we need to assert that we got a broker in our state here. So so this is an SQS test. We just need to pass a broker as one of the errors here. And we probably also need to set up the ETS table. So let's do that. So SQS test, set up topology. We're passing a broker into here. Actually, I've sort of changed my mind. I'm sort of going back and forth, but I think I don't want the SQS spit to do that. I want that to be, where'd it go? Activate queues. So I want this part to probably be part of conduit SQS itself. So that accepts a broker, and then it would do what we have here. And then we can make this part private and then just check queues active, question mark, passive broker. And then inside of Polar, the stuff we're doing here up to this point, we can do here. And then in Polar here, we would do just inside the case statement itself, conduit SQS dot queue active for this broker. And then we don't need to pass anything extra to set topology. We don't need to send it activate queues. And then inside of setup, after this runs, we just want to call conduit SQS dot activate queues broker. Actually, let's change that to activate polars. So we can fix that here. Activate polars. And then let's change this to polars active. Okay. Let's one-line these. All right. So let's rerun the test with that. Oh, were we still passing broker to? Yeah, we are. Let's fix that. Let's undo the fix we did for the test. Now that we're no longer passing that there. So now we have two failures. Ugh. Oh wow. I'm going to disable the integration test for a second. So let's do that tag skip. Okay, so queue table name is private, and we're calling it from setup. So we're not calling it. What's calling that? Oh, it's undefined. Oh, we're passing nothing into it. So one thing I actually want to change here. Let's just call this meta name. Oops. So let's do it like that. So all of this is just related to the meta. I kind of feel like maybe I should pull that out. So let's do that. Let's create a new file called meta. So this will be conduit SQS dot meta. It'll have these functions. So let's move this down to the bottom. Okay, and then we just want to change this to this module. There we go. Cool. So now we don't have that here anymore, and we can just do let's alias meta. What am I using SQS here for? I'm not. So this just can be that. So now, here we can do meta.create. Oh, we don't really need meta in the name. So let's do meta.create. Create. And then active polars, polars active, activate polars, and then polars active. Okay. So now in setup, let's make that meta instead. We can alias that. And then the same thing in polar. We can change this to meta, and we can alias that. So let's rerun that. That should still fail, I presume. Yeah. So this is now expecting there to be an ETS table called that. So I think in this case I actually want that to be stubbable. So let's actually change this to inject meta, and then conduit SQS meta. Let's do the same thing in setup. So then this becomes meta, like that. And polar, same thing. All right. And then we should sub that up in the test. All right, so this is setup test. So let's define our own meta that's going to implement, which function are we calling here? We're calling activate polars, and we're accepting a broker. And we can send, so we want to send self a message of activate polars and the broker. All right, and then we should, so when we call activate polars, we call that in setup topology. So in setup topology, we should be able to assert that we received activate polars as well. With the broker that we passed in. Oh, so our state's going to need the broker as well. So with that, that part should be passing. Oh. Oh, right. We forgot to override it. So here we need to say meta equals the meta defined this test. Cool. And we have a pass there. So that was set up. We should add another test for polar now that we have this behavior there. So in the polar test on init, we should assert that we've also received a message, which will be check active. Oops. Whoa. Did some weird key combination there. So we're going to assert received check active. So that passed. And then we should also assert for handle info. So this is a particular case of get messages. We should describe the same thing for handle info for check active. Handle info to check active. All right. So what we want to do is say when test when polars should be active, do, and here we can override for polar meta, so let's call this meta active. And let's define meta active. So this is just going to be a module called meta active that defines polars active question mark broker and returns true. So when that is the case, then we expect when we call polar dot handle info and we pass it check active, it should it should call demand on itself and set it to forward. So here we can just assert. Well, we don't need to assert anything there. But we should receive a message. I don't know what the message is going to be though, so I'm just going to do that. So whenever we call GenStage.demand with the new state, it's going to send a message. I just don't know exactly what it looks like. So we can assert this, and it'll fail, and then it'll show us what was in the mailbox for that process. So we're going to do the same thing for the opposite case. So we're going to do meta inactive. So that's going to return polars active, broker. Let's just go complain that I'm not using these. And that's just going to return false. And then we can build the equivalent test. So here we're going to assert that we receive, since we use send after, it's not going to be immediate. So we're going to receive check active again, and we're going to wait, let's just say 40 milliseconds. So it should be 20 milliseconds that we get the message back, and this just gives us some buffer in case, for whatever reason, it's slow. Oh, I did find the same test twice. Should not be active. Okay. Oh, right, I was supposed to pass state in here. So I just need to create polar state and do the same thing for this one. Oh, interesting. Oh, I forgot to use inactive here. Copy and paste problems. So cool. So I'm just going to assert that I got this here. Cool. So now that means after setup's done creating the queues, it's going to set a value in the ETS table to true, and the pollers are initially just going to be polling to see, is that value set to true yet? If so, then they're going to switch their state to forward, which means that they'll start processing things from the queue and sending them on to the workers. And up until that point, they're just going to keep polling to check to make sure that that value hasn't changed. So let's see, is there anything else I want to test here? I could test meta, I suppose. Let's do that, since I mocked it out everywhere else. Async should be, let's say false here. So describe, well, actually, I can make it true here. So the reason I can make it true here is just because I can pass the name that it's going to use by just specifying which broker. And so if it's a broker that's nested under this test, then it won't conflict with any others. So let's just do this. All right, so I want to, let's just do setup. Then we can return OK, and our state, which will be let's call it meta, and then we can alias that here, conduit SQS meta, and then do meta.create broker, like that. So then let's call, let's define a meta. So there's create, which we're using here, so I'm not going to belabor that. And then there is activate polars and polars active. This feels like just an integration test. So So I just want a test. Controls pullers being active. And into this I want to pass the meta. Oh, actually, I don't need this. Let's just simplify this. Let's do it this way. Since we're only going to have one test here. We can do that. So now the table exists. Then we can do meta dot pullers active and pass in broker. And we should assert that actually, let's refute that. And then if we call meta.activate pullers with broker, we can then assert that meta.pullers active is true. So let's run that. Oh, we get a list. Well, that is going to not be what we want here. Good thing we tested it. So let me look at the API for ETS again. I was expecting that to return one item. Okay, well that's fine. We can just say in meta that the results of this should match a list with active true. Yeah. Uh-oh. Doesn't like. That. Doesn't like the way I'm doing that. That's fine. We can just do let's do it this way. So case, oops. So if we get an empty list, let's just say that's false. And if we get a list with an item in it, also a tuple with active and some value, and it could be however long the list is, that we return the value for. So this is handling a case where, so this shouldn't really happen, but so we don't set the value initially, so it's going to return an empty list. But if we ever, for some reason, set the value of active to be false, this would just forward the value on. And then when we set it to true, it should also forward the value on. And I'm just protecting myself just in case there's a situation where we return multiple of the same value. So let's see if that works. Okay, and we have a warning here. So I never like to see warnings like this. Oh, I removed the alias for the module and it was getting used there. So this is conduit SQS. Let's put the alias back because it's getting used down here. Okay. Let's just look at what we did, and then we can commit it. So we added the ability to activate polars. Oh, and I changed something in SQS that no longer needs to be changed. All right. So now let's tackle the integration test. So let's close a bunch of this stuff. So let's remove skip, and let's delete the VCR. And rerun. Oops. All right, yeah, those should be different. Okay. So a lot of stuff got dumped there. Oh shit. Well, I'm going to need to change something. Um, So it's failing because enumerable not implemented for nil. Well, no, that should be part of the. That's sweet XML doing that. So we're calling get messages. And what are we getting back? Let's change this test real quick to do just this part, or to not do this part. And we're not going to do this part. Okay, so that part works. We declare our queue, which is this. So we call create queue, queue name subscription, and we get back a response. Then we send a message, so that part works. And so it's just the receive part that seems to not be working. So why does receive not work? So if I do this part, and blow this away again. And rerun this. All right, so last message was gen consumer. PID and reference, and then the list of messages. So we called this guy. So let's look at worker 22. Huh? 32. Okay, I was like, that makes no sense whatsoever. All right, so we're inside here, inside message processor. And we call enum.each, which is presumably inside of SQS. Yeah, so we call each. So no function clause matching an anonymous function in ACK messages. So we're not getting, oh, right. Okay, that's not. So this is the one part I didn't test because I was like, oh, I'll test in the integration test. No longer passing, so message batches is just this is just a list that we want to delete everything for, so we shouldn't even be iterating over this. We should just be doing this. Let's call it that there. And let's rerun. Q is missing. Right. I need to pass the Q. All right, so this gets used inside a message processor. So name here, it's not the queue name. So this is going to be a little bit gross, but for now I'm just going to say this dot first, or actually let's just do head messages dot actually, so the list could be empty. Well, that's fine, whatever. So let's say source here. And that's a slightly different order, so I want to do queue second. Like that. Then do that. Right. So injects whenever I override a module, double checks to make sure that I'm using functions that have the same signature for my mocks, and it told me that I wasn't for one particular case, which is the message processor test. So here we just need to say our queue, and we can add that here. We can do that. Oh, actually, we want this one. And same thing here. We want backable. Not there. Here. And same thing here. Interesting. So now we've broken something else. But that's good. Is this our integration test? Yeah, still an integration test, just different problem. So let's get rid of this and that. So what's happening here? Let's just so what are we doing now? So we're creating the queue. That's good. We are calling receive on the queue. That's fine. We just haven't published anything yet. We're calling send message. So that's good. But then we stop before we actually pull anything off the queue. So Does our message not have a destination here? No, it should. It should get the destination automatically. So this line is the line that's failing. So it should get its outgoing name here. And it's not exactly clear to me what's going wrong. Because we make the request, it looks like XAWS is parsing the response, and that's where it fails. Hmm. So it's the same error a couple times. So it's the same place. So this is on get messages. Well, I'm going to end this here because I'm not sure exactly what's going wrong, and I think it's going to take a lot longer and probably not be super interesting for a stream. So I will post whenever I'm going to do a stream next. Bye, everyone.